and welcome back to Literally Literary. If this is your first time joining us, be sure to check out our previous episodes. This episode, we are beginning our discussion on the 5 Stages of Stuttering by Cassie Holguin-Pettinato. Today we'll discuss an overview and the first 2 sections of the collection.
All right, we're back.
Yay!
And we got another El Paso author
Finally.
to talk about, which is cool.
Yeah.
I say finally like it wasn't 2 books ago.
That's true.
Or was it, wait, 2 books? The last book? No,
Well,
2 books ago.
Yeah, Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Episode number 98.
98.
Yay!
What?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so close.
And we did the math. We
Yeah.
crossed all the I's,
that's
dotted the
accurate.
T's.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, because I forget that there are some episodes where it's like student call-ins and stuff. So
Well, I'm counting those.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not counting the trailer. So
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Dang.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
the interview will be episode 100.
That's
If we get to, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. No,
Maybe
she's
she'll
down.
get to she'll be too popular, and
In 2 weeks?
yeah,
That's fair.
she's doing
She's gonna blow up.
she's doing her residency right now.
Yes. At
Right.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
So,
She just got there today, I believe.
Oh,
yeah.
fun.
Should we talk about Cassie? Really?
That's what I was going to
Yeah,
say.
let's talk about Cassie.
So,
Where do we start?
what do you guys know about her?
Yeah, you guys that know
like
her.
everything. No, I'm just kidding.
Spill the tea.
I mean, I kept. All right, let's just restart the episode. Just kidding.
Delete everything, please.
Don't forget the claps. I met Cassie at Tumblewords way back, maybe like 8 or 10 years ago when Isela Fulton Slavin was running Tumblewords, and so Cassie was one of the, I would say maybe one of the OG members, or she was like one of the most. She was a huge fan of Isela, and she mentions it definitely in the acknowledgments, and not just the Lamb's Tale, but in 5 Stages of Stuttering. So yeah, I kind of known her, and in this collection, she kind of does talk a lot about those changes. So I think before the show, I was telling you guys like, hey, I remember her during this part of her life that she's writing here, and but I know she liked writing and poetry. So and she did a lot of traveling, and I know she was working on her craft. So it's been a little while, and I've had the pleasure of getting to see her grow into not only a writer but a performer, right? Performing and reading at open mics all around the city and in the region, but also playing music, so it's cool to see her do all this. And then of course her art too. She did a lot of like shadow boxes and like collage work, so a lot of expression and expressiveness from Cassie. And I know you know her too.
Yeah. Through the Writing Center. We both started working there as tutors, I think around the same time, if not like months in between. But yeah, it's been really interesting. I don't think we talked too much when we first started working there because our schedules were like opposites. But no, I've really gotten to know her in this past year, especially just talking with her at the center. Like her journey with publishing this book too. She would talk to us about it. I saw her and Aldo workshopping a lot of probably the pieces that are in here. Yeah, they'll just, anytime they have a shift together, it's so cute. They'll be just writing together and like talking about it. They did this prompt from I think poets.org the other day. And so Aldo did theirs, and it was very Aldo. And then Cassie read hers out loud, and it was very Cassie. And it was really interesting because it was one of those kind of like the Mad Libs kind of thing. So they were each like, it was like write a color. And so then Aldo would write their color, and then Cassie would write her color. And then they would fill in the blanks. And it was really interesting to see just how different the 2 poems were, and just like showed each of their skills and stuff.
I didn't know Poets.org did that.
I don't know where they found it. I think it was poets.org.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then Aldo Amparan. You guys
Shut up.
Brother Sleep.
covered the book, right?
Yep.
Yeah, highly acclaimed. I've met a lot of other authors who have read Brother Sleep, especially I've talked before about my online mic, and Aldo's work has traveled, right? we had a performer from the Philippines read Aldo's work as a cover poem, and like
That's
we had to like tell him like Aldo's from El Paso, like, and so it was a way very cool, and also like damn, it's, you know, El Paso's making some moves. So Aldo left a really great blurb for
Yes.
Cassie's book, as well as Cheryl Lunu. Cheryl is also from El Paso. She's currently in Colorado. But I know her personally. She's a good friend. I met her through Ahmet Ghosh, and so it's cool to see two El Paso poets giving praise. So
Yeah.
you know, in FlowerSong, we've looked at other published from FlowerSong as well.
Yes.
So shout out to the press, you know, for giving Cassie
Yeah.
her first full collection. When we say first full collection, because she has a chapbook, The Lamb's Tale, and we unfortunately didn't have a chance to cover it on the podcast. Because I think just at the time we were just really busy. I think we had like what would you say, like a list already to kind of work through. So the timing didn't work out. I was able to cover it though on my other podcast, the BWOMS podcast. So if you guys like to listen to these and want to meet more authors and people who are poets, spoken word poets, and even musicians in the community, check out the BWOMS podcast. It's available on Spotify, Apple. So if you guys listen to it, episode 53 is the episode I did with Cassie. In fact, I even filmed that, so you can even look that up on YouTube. Like it's a video podcast as well. And we just recently added Rex too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So if you guys go there to Spotify, click on More Like This, and you'll see the BWOMS podcast as one of the recommendations, along with Words on a Wire. So shout out to Tim remembers.
Tim and Daniel. They rock.
Yeah. And actually, I want to say that I met Cassie also some years back through Papagayo.
Yeah.
When Acela was there, and you know, I know that Cassie was quite instrumental in helping Acela, you know, found Papagayo as this kind of literary center. And I think even back then, of course, you know, she was already working on her poetry and her creative writing. So you know, it really it like nothing beats, I think, seeing writers, you know, develop their craft and then publish something. So it's been really great following Cassie's journey, and I really do recommend Lamb's Tale, as we were talking about. You know, if you really want to get poems that do go more into El Paso and Smelter Cemetery and La Calavera neighborhood. It's a really interesting work. And then for Papagayo, she did give a workshop on both Lamb's Tale, and she just did a workshop on this 5 Stages of Stuttering. So I really want to thank her for her support for Papagayo, you know, throughout the years.
Yeah. To kind of add to that, her Lamb's Tale workshop that we did for Papagayo was really powerful for that group of students. I remember that a lot of people were opening up. There were tears, and one of the other students, Michelle, like was really, really inspired to make her own. She published something, and I would say Cassie was really, really such a huge part of that. So in case Cassie didn't know that already, now you know.
Yeah.
Some other things maybe we should say. She did get her bachelor's from UTEP. So she did go to school here in creative writing. What was I going to say?
Currently, she's where? Martha's Vineyard, right?
Yeah. She's doing writing a poetry residency. She says that they added a spot for her, which is really cool. Yeah, she got funding through the community, I believe.
Crowdfunding,
Yeah. So that's really cool that everybody was able to help her get there. What else should we say?
That's going to be awesome to be able to talk to her after that experience and really
Yeah.
pick her brain like about the experience. And
Excited to see what comes from that, you know, what writing comes from that.
That's true.
Another thing that maybe something kind of special about this collection, she's actually the one that designed the cover. I don't think we've had any books.
I feel like that's a rarity.
Yeah, and I feel like we haven't talked about any books that the author themselves has designed the cover. So that's really cool that she was the one who had like full free reign with this collection. And even the size of it is a little different than most poetry collections. It's a little bit bigger. And that was something that she kind of fought for,
Yeah,
too.
she mentioned that. Yeah, she definitely put her foot down on that. Like, no, it has to be this size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff she's doing too, like textually, like some that varies and different. And it had to kind of be the size so it fits right.
Yeah.
Visually, yeah.
It's cool. We can talk about that conversation. Like
Yeah.
putting like I want to do the cover, and it's calling shots, you know.
Yeah.
But also, I think that also speaks to how awesome like Edward is in FlowerSong Press, like you know, helping bring her work to life in the way she wants to. Because I know so many authors like don't get to choose a lot of time their cover or
Yeah.
okay. And of course, we're covering the first 2 sections, which means that's out of 5. Because
Yes.
after all, it's 5 stages of stuttering. Should we kind of like dive into that concept? She does talk about it in the preface.
Yeah. I know she did a lot of research into it, looking into like stuttering and the different types of stuttering that there is. And then she found a way to connect it to grief. Both of her collections, both the Lamb's Tale and this one, talk a lot about grief.
So there's a lot of her heart in there.
Yeah.
It's kind of the concept too. She talks about it like she's dealing with it, even though it's like healing is also traumatic in its own way, right? And,
Yeah.
And the idea is that like he can kind of start to negotiate and engage with some stuff, and then maybe be able to move on from it to new. Because she talks about like moving on to other stuff, and she is now. I mean, she talks about Ireland a lot, and I know she made her trip, and that was life changing
Yes.
for her.
Yeah.
That's a presence in here all throughout. Oh, I was gonna ask. She mentions that she was inspired by a short film or a short piece called Adaptability. I don't know if any of you guys had seen it or.
No.
I meant to watch it before this, but I made a note for sure, like to
For part
see.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So homework for us,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Says
watching party.
video segment.
It's a video Yeah, video. And maybe it's part of like other more full work.
But yeah, in the preface, we do get the 5 disfluencies, right? The 5 forms of stuttering, the repetitions, prolongations, blocks, interjections, and revisions. And we also get the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Like we said, she did present this at a workshop, so it was great kind of seeing this with students applying it to their own, and then they had an opportunity to share it, and that's right. I really love spaces like Babia that kind of provide students that opportunity.
Yeah, that was at the Little Temple. It's a pretty great turnout. That is something I did want to say overall about the book. The way she framed it, the 5 types of disfluencies, in addition to the 5 like levels. Like we're more familiar with the levels of grief, right? We hear those a lot, come across them a lot, especially.
Yeah.
But yeah, disfluencies not as much. So it was kind of interesting how she kind of was able to take the theme or concept of each one and kind of transform that into pieces. And I think that works really well for just like future creative writing workshops as well, right? Basing a theme based on this type of disfluency, plus maybe the emotional attachment, like again the different levels of jeez. Yeah, sorry. I totally lost my train of thought there, but yeah, just the stages of acceptance or not acceptance. That's not what they're called. Sorry. Stages of grief.
So did you guys want to start then stage 1?
Yeah.
Repetitions.
Which she connected to denial.
So it's kind of, and that's also, I mean, we talk about this in collections, like it's always interesting to see how authors break up or group their work, into sections. This one just kind of lends itself to these sections, right? Because, she does a lot, right? She has an epigraph here. Is anyone familiar with Fortessa Latifi?
No.
So the theme in that is grief, right? All my grief says the same thing. This isn't how it's supposed to be. This isn't how it's supposed to be. And the world laughs, holds hope on my throat, says, but this is how it is. It's an interesting way to start the entire collection, I think, because you kind of have the repetition there in that quote too. But
Yeah.
just the way it is kind of like also maybe leading towards that acceptance. So anyway, sorry, because I guess now it's repetitions. Oh, so hot. Sorry, it's like brain
June
malfunction.
in El Paso.
This is a piece she reads a lot. Like I've heard it probably almost the most recently because it's like the starting point for her. And I think she introduces it as such when she reads, this is where it all began. And of course, the name of the piece is In the Beginning. Have you guys heard her read this one out loud? I mean, she read it at the public.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess because the kittens come up later on too, kind of throughout, right?
Yeah.
And also just this imagery of like, here it's her father, but later on her brother, of like these forces, planetary forces, like that's the extent and scale in which they're kind of destructive.
Yeah.
And the way they're built up. But yeah, just kind of extends to this almost helplessness of not being able to help the kittens that she comes across that are like missing forms. And it's a really interesting way to look at it from as a kid wanting to help them, and the perspective later on, like, you could argue this, you could argue that, like they could get me sick, but I wanted to help them. And the helplessness of like understanding this isn't who my father was.
And then, we do get a lot of notes in this collection, right? So it does help to kind of see, some of the allusions. So here, of course, we get the Genesis, right? And instead of, there being light in the beginning, it was the darkness. And I would say the collection as a whole is pretty dark. But I think because it is the 5 stages, we'll see, at the end kind of how it ends. But yeah, I mean, just the helplessness that we see here from the kittens, and I like my strong line was one who would not take the time to talk to me, take the kittens to the vet and find a home. One who would not care for orphans, a border crosser, a crying child, a sick animal. Just kind of extrapolating from this memory, what kind of person her father was.
Yeah, my strong line's connected to that, right? Before, right? I guess the oppressive force, right? I couldn't ignore the universe calling me to care for the orphans. The moment my father walked through the door, he was an asteroid entering the Earth's orbit, coming to end life. I mean, I think that's a really great image of just like the sheer helplessness of it. You can't really do anything against that.
My strong line was before that. I saw beauty in a design that was not finished, the way a body can survive.
Yeah, that was my strong line too.
Yeah. And to go back to Jorge's point about like the religious imagery, it's really interesting to start the collection this way, and knowing a little bit about Cassie's background with religion and that too. It's I knew it was going to come up in the collection, so I was intrigued to see like how she's incorporating that here. Like the Genesis, as Jorge mentioned, but also talking about the asteroid, and so there's like the already clashing here a little bit of these beliefs and things like that. So, and then later, of course, we get a lot more of the church and how she feels about God and all of that stuff. So, yeah, it's really interesting.
There's a lot of institutions here that she ends up projecting, and I mean, let's dig into it. So this is the beginning. Anything else on this one?
Well, I felt like that was my strong line just because this collection focuses a lot on her trauma, both like physically and emotionally and mentally, and just pain all around that. So just focusing on the way that a body can survive after having gone through so much was just really impactful for me.
All right. Yeah, it's a good opener, and I can tell why she includes this a lot in her sets when she performs.
Yeah.
So Leo season, I would say, is kind of a part of the denial part, right? Looking back on this early relationship, and my strong line on this one was the fourth stanza at the end, right? I didn't know you, I didn't know myself.
Yeah.
Just looking back, and just that's we always think we know that when we're young, we want to think we know it all, and obviously this was not a great relationship for her. I mean, the last stanza kind of showcases that, but I don't know if anyone had anything else to expand on this.
Kind of more the cosmic imagery there in in that fourth stanza. You came towards me like a crashing planet and spoke in rhythms. I was a girlfriend.
Yeah. And that's what I alluded to when I mentioned the other one, right? Her boyfriend too, also kind of this cosmic body that's destructive, that you can't hold up and stop a crashing planet or a asteroid or.
So would you say Cassie's keeping it cosmic here?
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really, I mean, obviously with like Leo season and,
So I don't follow up enough on the
astrology.
astrology. So Leo season, what's the significance of Leo season?
She's a Leo, or
No, she's not.
no?
What is a Leo? See, I don't know enough of astrology to know. Do we need to call in an expert?
Leos, I think, are like
AKA
end of
Google.
July, early August. They can come off very, I guess, like full of themselves, like very confident.
Okay. So you imagine this is her attaching this to this boyfriend that's being written about.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Guess maybe we can ask something we can ask, right? I mean, also talking about like the cosmic imagery, right? There's this thing about the sun, like kind of like staring at the sun, and a little bit of that entails, which I don't know. I think of Icarus anytime the sun is invoked and like looking at the sun, flying too close to the sun, and she kind of uses back to the darkness, right? Theme is I didn't know I would never see again, right? To end off that piece, which.
And in the Misfit lyrics, in the notes we get in the background underscored, your message are actually from a Donna Snyder poem, who was, of course, from Tumblewords. So it's interesting kind of seeing the references here, and not just to lyrics, but to other works. And I think later on she even references her own chapbook too. So
Yeah. Donna is someone who was really important to Cassie, and Cassie was really important to her later in life. Dawn had passed away, and I think they formed a really strong bond in her last months of living.
yeah.
So rest in peace, Donna Snyder. She was a really big, important part of like our literary community, like in outside of like academia and Tumblewords. So it's nice to have that included, in that note included. Confirmed diagnosis, I think, fills us in on another type of pain, right? Physical pain that has been ailing. And she talks about, like, again, we all know her.
Yeah.
So she talks about it often, right? So, but poetically, the thing that I thought was really interesting about this, it kind of reminded me of like when we've come across like recipe poems where you have like the recipe, but in there you kind of add more. And here she adds some other elements aside from the diagnosis, right? You have the medical like explanation and diagnosis, but then she kind of adds some other things here, like possible causes, right? And one of them is in the car with a man with road rage, impatience, and lack of empathy, right? You wouldn't.
Yeah, making that a little bit more personal and I guess vulnerable, right? Like anytime we're given something like this that's, a definition or something medical, it's always like, direct, black, white. And so I think that that's kind of interesting for her to have these interjections in put in there, like you said, Richie. She does that at the end as well. Counseling for emotional pain or attempt to deal with it, but you can't. Heal time, never. Right? So, yeah, I thought this one was also pretty powerful poem. Really raw, really like gives us some insight into that pain that's not only physical but emotional.
Absolutely, yeah. And it does lead to that, especially the frustration of kind of always seeking treatment or trying to deal with it, but having no respite or no way of relieving that pain.
And I think also the medical system's frustration of the frustration with the medical system and how women are not like a lot of times their pain is gaslit or denied, right? So
Yeah, I know that was something she had a hard time with, was like finding a doctor that would like actually listen to her. And it's something that, this has been something that she's really struggled with a lot.
So like majority of people have been like dismissive, like, oh, it's
they're like, nothing's wrong with you.
it'll subside, or yeah. So I mean, I guess there's another institution, right? That
Yeah. But she started running recently, so that's really great.
That's good.
She's on her way up, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of, if any relief, right, was also just getting a diagnosis. Because I think for a long time it was a mystery for her.
Yeah.
That's so I
Just
guess
not knowing.
Frustrating.
being able to name it now and,
Yeah.
and understand what it is, like that's something. But
Right.
Yeah.
heal time never. It's just so short, and it just hits the end of this piece too.
Yeah.
kind of the issue here, right, of chronic pain, right? I mean, those are things that don't heal. But I think writing about it, right, and naming it, that has power in it.
I know the corpse hymn. She also. I remember her reading this one at her reading at the Little Temple. You guys know the song, right? Yeah. No, I had it stuck in my head while reading it.
Yeah.
But I mean, this one
The
is
Marines hymn.
yeah. From the halls of Montezuma. Yeah, like it's. I don't know. I've seen it from movies.
Yeah.
Pop culture. But speaking of institutions, right? She one thing she deals and wrestles a lot with is her brother, who she really feels she like lost, right?
Yeah.
Or found himself, right? There's a couple different ways she mentions it, in not just this piece but other pieces. But here it takes that Marine Corps hymn and there's interjections that she adds. It's actually very structurally interesting, right? Because at first it seems like it's going from the lyric to some additional stuff she added back to the lyric but then it doesn't. It kind of like intermixes throughout.
The tutors at the writing center like to do this silly little thing called dumb question of the day. They don't change it every day. It's more like dumb question of the week. But one of them wrote, for this week, they wrote, what do you miss? And so a bunch of them put like silly little things. Like one of them put, I miss drinking soda. One of them put lowbrow's old location. And Cassie put my brother. So yeah, I know that her relationship with her brother isn't great or really there anymore.
And it is kind of interesting how it is not just about her brother, right, but about the military industrial complex that she ends up critiquing and scene for what it is, like how predatory it can be for young men and women.
Yeah, she really, really goes into that one more in depth in Rogue.
Yeah.
Yeah. But here you do have like again you have kind of separation through slashes, but like I think some of these associations are, his leather belt, his words, like things that when I think of leather belt, I think of like punishment, maybe, but it could also be like in Marines, that's the uniform, and his words, venom and villain and brother being put together like that. And I think there's another one here where it's like sister, traitor sister. I'm sure that's come up with like maybe disagreements and just like how to, like philosophies of life, right? Ceasefire. A lie, a truth. We are proud to claim a lie, a truth. It's a very interesting one to read out loud, I think, too. But I like the disruption of it, too. Is it like an element of like introspection? But I guess we can explore the theme more, too, with Rogue, because I think it's more outright.
Yeah.
The first year of Pentimiento on page 9. I wasn't familiar with the term. I don't know about you guys, right? Pentimiento, a visible trace of an earlier painting beneath layers of paint on a canvas. And this also ties back to Cassie's own background as an artist. What did you guys think of this one?
This one I felt like was one of the first, the one where I felt like there was a lot of repetition in this one.
So this is where you get the first glimpse, too, of like the mention of missionary work, and I guess part of her life journey of taking her around, but also a marriage, right? That's referenced. And the leave and cleave, that's a lot of the repetition that you see.
Yeah.
And then later, cleave and leave. Page 10.
It's inverted.
And I guess like tying it to denial, a lot of these pieces kind of are her fighting with what she feels like she's supposed to be doing and it not really being what she wants in this, I guess, kind of like a denial of where her life is going.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of guilt in this poem that we see through again, like this religious imagery and like what she should be doing, how she feels about it, what she's actually doing, how she feels about that, you know?
I mean, this is also maybe like a first sense of like alienation against the church and like faith, right? I think she has this line here that says, no one showed up, no one ever shows up, right? Like asking for help from the congregation, from the community, and tough times, and not feeling that, not getting that. And then like the blues reference here, you sing the blues, I play the blues, the 3 notes over and over. And for those who don't know, blues chords are 3 notes out of a scale. The first note, the 4th note, and the 5th note of an 8-note scale. So that's what makes a blues scale or chord. That, I think the whole thing at the end too, the repetition of I do. Normally I do is like tied into marriage, but this is kind of like I want to stay married. I do. Like normally, I thought that was an interesting inversion, which I guess talk about inversion, the leave and cleave.
Yeah, I hear it's more just like a pleading.
I do want to stay.
Or like even just like a trying to convince herself.
Right, yeah, the repetition of that too, driving that home.
And it's also like a very visible image, right? Because I kind of think more of like an amputation, because later on she has a poem about the phantom limb. And you kind of have to cut off a piece of yourself in this relationship.
Leave and cleave.
Yeah, right. Cleave and leave. Leave and cleave.
Yeah, she has so many powerful lines in this poem. And I don't know if like they're lines because, you know, we have the splits. I don't know, what are those called?
I can't remember right now. I use them all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I looked it up and I can't remember. Yeah,
Yeah, and the
It's
second
like
breaks. The
I mean, that's
second
what
to last, second to last stanza. I bled on the altar, you held me. I kneeled, they laid hands on my body, begged for healing, begged for mercy. Just, you know, a lot of this, again, like pleading, but guilt, religious imagery. Yeah, when I saw the title the first year of Pentimento, I thought was a religious term. But then seeing like what it actually meant, the trace of an earlier painting beneath layers of paint on a canvas, like that just again goes back to like all the different levels and layers there are to pain and trauma and healing. And she goes into a lot of these here, but yeah, this one was hard to get through.
just to kind of also speak on the transformative nature, like I think the definition of pentimento is specific enough that I hadn't heard this term. There's another term for like a work that's been covered by another work. It's not this one, but if you look at the definition, it's a visible trace of an earlier, like it's like the evidence of something earlier. We don't get it here, but later on she also mentions how she had to like change herself before, like before she like got into the church and everything. She
Oh, yeah.
and then when she leaves again, she has to like, she talks about converting back to herself. Kind of makes me think of that. Like that's the trace of her, her old self through all this trauma. Like, and then that's how it ends, having to return home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Confession was an interesting form, right? The pregnancy one, because
Yeah.
it's pregnant.
The poem is pregnant.
There's a poem inside the poem.
Which one did y'all read first?
I read the outside one first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
'Cause, you know, I feel like that makes sense. Unless
I
you're
had to fight myself to keep reading the outside one because then I would get to the middle and I'd be like, let me just read the middle. I'd be like, no.
no, that's like reading the last page of a book.
No,
you
I know.
Which I do know some people who do that. I'm like, you monster. Which I've done before. So it's a confession. It's a confession.
This one was one of the ones that needed the book to be the size that it is.
Yes.
Just because of the way that she wanted it to look on the page.
Yeah. Oh, what did the notes say about this?
A lot of passages from
And that's the outer text.
Bible.
yeah,
Yeah.
from the Bible.
That makes sense. That's what it's kind of a little bit white glossed over it, to be honest. I'm like, okay. Which isn't the best way to read something. And I was just more interested in the inner part, which I felt was like an inner truth, which is the confession, which is the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wrote inside the little box. I wrote inner thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see it as like the image that was portrayed by the speaker in her religious identity, but what was really on the inside, you know, was the confession there. Yeah, we get the psalm there of, I have no fear, for you are with me.
Fear's the mind killer. I'm just kidding. That's something. That sounds like the I have no fear, for you are with me. Isn't there like the Jedi one?
Oh, like the Jedi code or like the fear leads to anger kind of thing.
No, I'm thinking of the other one.
We must consult the
The
texts.
blind guy in.
The force is with me.
Oh.
Yeah, I am one with the force.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
It's been
It's
zero.
not the same, but
It's been 0 episodes since our last Star Wars reference.
sorry.
I'm going to change the number on the board. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's be fair. Have we ever had to like move it from 0?
No.
There's always a Marvel or a Star
Yeah.
Wars.
which is great. This is why I love this
or
podcast.
Matrix.
It's getting kind of ridiculous.
I don't know if anyone had any other points or comments on Confession.
No, because I want everybody to read it.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're
We're always
you an idea of what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, we're always toeing the line. Like, we want to talk about it, but we don't want to like spoil it. We want you to experience
Yeah.
it. So definitely pick it up. Let's see, we have a couple more still to go over. Good Friday is the one I was mentioning too, by the way.
Yeah.
Where she talks about converting back to herself.
Yeah.
That was my strong line.
Ah,
Yeah.
you want to add to that? Or?
No. Just, you know, I underlined it, but I also put a star next to it, which means it was double good for me.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Like I'll underline it, and then when I put this, yes, there's a system to it, and I
There's
love
a
that you do that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm converting back to myself. I just love that because, you know, it's finding yourself. It's a spiritual journey for her
Yeah.
to do that. And yeah, I just think that that's amazing, you know, for anyone who's able to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, the repetition that we see, you know, we see these. It's like in Gabrielle's collection where we get the repeated lines throughout the collection. The ouch, 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 she said. It reminded me not just of like, you know, some of the other poems, but also, you know, the repetition and Sylvia Plath's Daddy, you know, where we get the eek, you know, I, where like her tongue gets stuck in a like barbed wire and
Damn, that's pretty.
yeah.
Pretty solid connection. I do remember, like I said, I remember meeting her way back when Isela was running, and that had to have been what, maybe 2013, 2014. I started kind of helping out with that because I thought it was a cool project, and as an adjunct, I'm like, well, it's a cool way to be involved with the school a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which, I'll be honest, probably most adjuncts don't do. But I'm like, that's cool. I love being involved with literary events and things. So, but I do remember Cassie was like always come in as a returning student and would have the big like welcome from Isela. And I do remember at that point when she was very like in the religion and like just before maybe leaving to do like, missionary work and stuff. And
Yeah.
or I don't know if it's a long time. It's all kind of melded together, but I do seeing the transformation in her, right? And then the last little part of this, I guess you would count it a poem. Like she has these kind of recording type commands, the rewind. It's like a flashback, the rewind, and I don't know, the way I read, as soon as I picked this up, I heard like the click and then the like I heard the sound effects. And the way she kind of wrote it on page helped me achieve that effect. You know, my inner voice. Pretty dark way of ending it. The rewind. And again, the darkness, like literal darkness too, but thematically, of course.
Shall we move to stage 2, prolongations?
Yeah. Prolongations, she connected to anger. So prolongations are holding on to a sound, kind of the way you hold on to anger. So,
Yeah. Oh. Here's.
I said you, but
wish-
I'm talking to myself. No, I'm just kidding.
True. No. But that's also a really great connection, and
It's the royal you.
this is purely an audio version today. I want to do it, but like you had a little bit of like light bulb.
I connected it.
You're so I felt it too. You know, like very good. And I didn't realize prolongation was a type of this. I mean, part of like stuttering because I do it a lot.
So fear leads to anger now.
Yeah.
All right, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
here's that rogue.
do a -1.
I don't know if anyone had silent miscarriages or.
Well, in this one, she has a pretty good example of the prolongations. So it's like find, and things like that. This is interesting. I know in the notes she mentioned that she had like a book or something that kind of helped her with knowing how to write the different types of stuttering. Yeah. A helpful guide to writing the different stutters is from Stuttering, a Teacher's Guide PDF from marshall.edu.
I didn't have really much for silent miscarriage other than that.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
Rogue. So yeah, Rogue's that kind of further exploration where she's very critical of this her brother, you know, and it's a very
Yeah.
conflicted relationship.
Yeah.
And I think you start with this thing here where she's trying to understand him, like talking about an elephant being away from their herd.
Yeah. I know she says that when he came back, he was just a completely different person and just changed. So obviously that has to do with like PTSD. And then there was a line, I guess towards the third and the fourth stanzas. For what reason would you go through such destruction, humiliation, constipation, stripped of who you are? And then in the next stanza, your clothes are taken away. And it just made me kind of think of just your identity being taken from you.
Yeah, the
I feel like
second
we talked about that too with like clothing and then with Bad Mexican, Bad American, I think. We talked about like how clothes kind of identify
the
like
costume.
yeah, like who you are. Or clothes are a representation of who you are. So this one just kind of showed his identity being taken from him.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of add to the lines you chose, mine was on the second to last where it says they beat out of you the name I loved. It's not even you.
And then, you know, when I was reading this collection, I was also reading another book because, of course, we always read, you know, more than one book at the same time. Vincent Cooper sent out a copy. So, you know, thank you for him to send me a copy of his latest poetry book, Infidelis. And in that one, you know, he also talks about his time in the Marines as a Chicano. You know, so I do see a lot of similarities here. And Infidelis, the title itself, you know, comes from the Semper Fi, that, you know, always faithful Marine motto, right? But yeah, I mean, I kind of, it's very similar in how both of them, you know, present the true reality of what it's like serving in the armed forces. You know, people are discarded, people are as destructive as they can be to other places. It's also self-destructive, and you see that here.
Yeah, and that's interesting seeing it from that perspective, I'm sure. And then seeing it here from the outside perspective, how she's seeing that he made the choice willfully to be stripped of his identity, and that's why she's angry about it. You know, like,
Yeah.
they took you from me. So
Which she addresses at the end of the poem, right? And she says, or, because she's trying to understand it. It's like, or maybe this is who you kind of are. She remembers him shooting at animals and kind of feeling joy in that, like him kind of seeming like he's feeling joy out of that. Which it's interesting you mentioned that piece because Chicano, because the next piece of hers is Soy Chicana.
Yeah.
And I remember reading this one too. Her reading this one at the Little Temple.
Does
I
that-
think she read the other one too. Maybe not. I can't remember.
I can't remember, but this is actually my favorite one
Okay.
of the collection. Yeah, but I really liked, you know, when she read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has an interesting conceit here, right? Where she has what would you say, the phonetic gringo pronunciations of
Yeah.
Spanish words. Which, I mean, we could have a whole podcast on just like chicanismo, chicanisma, like the meaning, like what it is. And so here she's kind of defining it for herself, but also adding this pronunciation guide.
Yeah.
And then here, you know, the speaker brings up the father, right? Soy chicana porque a mí, padre me llama traidora, right? And then the pronunciation there is traidora. Yeah, so I like how there's kind of this dual way of interpreting these lines from that American perspective and then like her Chicana identity that's kind of seeping through.
Yeah. I also feel like she talks about this very nicely in Lamb's Tale, like throughout her identities. She talks about that, like her parents' homes and
Definitely.
the split. So again, another recommendation for Lamb's Tale as well.
Yeah. And what did you guys make of the pronunciation being bolded versus the other parts not bolded? Like,
Yeah,
is
I was
that trying to
wondering about
emphasize that? Yeah. Because it kind of gives it more precedence.
Yeah.
But that kind of, maybe we can ask her.
It's just it's a zeitgeist, you know. Sorry, I don't know. I mean, it just probably pays attention to like I think of like it's very anglicized the pronunciation. So it's like this idea of maybe catering to like the I don't know how to say it. Sorry. I keep thinking about the word traitor though, and how it came up in here too, title, because like I wanted to attach it to Rogue, where in the other poem she talks about the chorus hymn. She also has that word traitor, and that was kind of like stuck in my mind a little bit because you imagine they have these conversations, and she's very critical of militarization and like kind of again the core Marines here. Where she's been called that word probably sticks around, and here it's her father now saying traitor.
And it is what I think a lot of people here in El Paso go through, right? Is a lot of parents feel that their kids are not sticking to their roots, right? And so they get that traitor label because they do kind of lose, their Spanish and kind of the view that Pocho isn't like, a real, like, it's not legitimate, right? It's not like, it doesn't trace back to like the Castilian colonial roots.
I also wondered why not everything had the, pronunciation, just certain words.
Yeah.
And a lot of the same words, like me.
That could be a good question.
I think me is perfect because, she's saying this is me, right? And that's the pronunciation of me in Espanol. But yeah, like Chicana isn't there, like there's a lot of
Because you could do the same thing,
words.
right, with that chi, ka, na, or whatever, how.
Yeah.
So the selection, I do like that. The me
And
tie-in. Meh, yeah, it's a t meh.
Yeah, I wondered about that one. On 20, we get the lamb's tail hides a multitude of sins. So that's
It's like the Da Vinci Code, you got to go and pick up the lamb's tail to find the codes, the multitudes. That's a beautiful line there. And I know that's one of the ones that Aldo highlighted in the blurb. I'm a singing hammer wanting to be beautiful again.
Yeah. This one's also a reference to The Lamb's Tale, her chapbook, from the very last poem in the collection on page 40.
Do you want to?
what a flex to like
That's what I'm saying.
reference
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
cool.
It's like Da Vinci Code. You got to go and find read it, and then come back to it, and then.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is another callback to her actual condition and the physical pain, right?
And healing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so you also have her the tattoos, and I do remember that from the Lamb's Tale too. This idea of covering up unhealed spider bites.
Yeah, because that is a line right from the chapbook, I think.
Oh, the title is I think it's the last line.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the end of it, the ending.
Yeah.
Which again, you can episode 35, Be Almost Podcast. You want to hear us talk more in depth about the collection?
Shameless plug.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah, there's no shame at all. Also thinking back to like the Chicano and like the generational thing. Another big generational gap, I think, is tattoos. And her first line really is like indicative, like my skin, graffiti all over their holy temple. You hear that all the time. Like, why would you do that to? I always hear older
Yeah.
Mexicanos and like complaining about like tattoos are like the fashion. More people are getting, and I always, my parents included, like, like, oh, it's so ugly, or like, and so she kind of like captures really well the disdain, right? Like graffiti and holy versus holy temple, and oh man, when I got this tattoo, I had it covered for a good while, like, okay, I'm gonna prolong this.
Prolongation.
Exactly. That's my tie-in.
Part 2.
Okay. Oh wait, there's more. Shit, I thought that was the last part. I
No.
was trying to wrap it up, Like, oh wait, there's more.
Did you have more thoughts on this one, Vanessa?
No, I feel like we covered most of, I feel like we're good here.
Yeah, another heavy poem
Yeah,
here.
son of Joseph and Shikai. Of course, I know Peter. Have you guys had a chance to meet him or talk to him or?
I met him at the workshop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned a lot through this one.
Yeah.
A lot of background and again, speaking of criticism, of critique, kind of missionaries, but also like just something very unsettling. I don't know about hearing of this, like someone just taking the way she says, like a flower plucked from the earth, dying in her pocket, is kind of one of the things I highlighted in here.
Yeah.
And I like the turn, like almost this volta at the end of you have a change in the form and the shape and him speaking.
Also just like the helplessness that kind of we saw at the beginning of the collection kind of comes back a little bit.
Kind of the loss of identity as well, just like we see with her brother.
Oh yeah. I really like the way she repeated like the words at the end, but she broke it up in different ways.
Yeah.
That it gave a different meaning each time a little bit, and that's a nice way of like kind of reading and unpacking kind of the complex emotions behind that.
I really liked the next poem, Definitions. It was interesting to see the way that she worded it on the page because she's talked about giving birth to her daughter Sonnet to me, like just in conversation. So it was really cool to see her write about it on the page.
And apparently, it's the name of an organization.
Yeah. I also really liked how she says you throughout this piece, kind of just, I guess, talking to herself in a sense. We see a little bit about the guilt here too.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what stood out to me in this piece.
Yeah.
Like the guiltiness of stuff. I mean, you couldn't control. I mean, but like maybe the way she felt about it.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you get a mention of Ireland as well, right? It comes up a couple times.
Also, more of the medical jargon and language that we see in the collection. A lot of it again is like very visceral, right? You can picture it.
And again, like just what stood out to me is like the rawness and the honesty of like those statements. You want to run away. You don't want motherhood, those things that a lot of people wouldn't admit, even if they are feeling that way.
Yeah. Yeah, just like the struggle with postpartum.
Yeah. I think also maybe talking about this stuff is I think at one point it's something people have trouble talking about.
Yeah.
So I think like a lot of this, it kind of destigmatizes they're probably natural feelings for a lot of mothers.
Going back to like what maybe possibly helped her heal, you know. It was writing this down and like acknowledging these things first, you know.
Yeah.
So moving away from that like denial towards acceptance, maybe.
And then again, the failure of spirituality, of like finding comfort in that, or it just fails at that. And you know, we get that in the last stanza.
Yeah, that was one of my strong lines there. A traumatizing mother doesn't fulfill the word, capitalized word. And then, it is a heavy read. I understand earlier when we were talking about like kind of having to put it down here and there. And not read it fully through in one sitting.
Yeah, I definitely was not able to just sit and read through the collection. Like I had to read maybe a couple of pieces and then had to sit with it for a little while.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I kind of had to do the same.
Does anybody have anything to say about the last poem in this second section?
The first stanza made me laugh out loud. The Spanish there, those pinche traviesos spoiled our vineyard. You know, in part because I was picturing Cassie. I could definitely see Cassie saying this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, these little trickster foxes, right?
Yeah, the imagery is cool. The only thing I had underlined was like the revisions of, you know, they turned the wine into dead water.
Which is another inversion.
Inversion there. They killed God. Just, yeah, really, really strong inversions and revisions to biblical verses and stuff. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Song of Songs.
Yeah, I mean the Song of Solomon. I was
Cantar de los Cantares. I only know the books in Spanish because
Spit it.
when we went
Spit
to
it.
church, we would read the Bible in Spanish. So, but then I converted back into myself, very much like Cassie. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
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 Nice. Yeah. Shout out to converting back to ourselves. Reverting.
And deconverting to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm excited to keep
enjoying
talking.
it.
So we got 3 more sections, 3 more disfluencies, as well as management of trauma and anger and all that good stuff.
And then
Worse
hopefully
stuff.
a conversation with Cassie too. So stay tuned.
Fingers crossed.
Imagine she says no. No, I'm just kidding.
On second thought,
She's like, I'm booked and busy.
we're just joking about this. Hopefully you guys know this. All right.
She'll be here. Okay. Okay. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Literally Literary, recorded at Power at the Pass and brought to you by Border Census. This episode, we began our discussion on the 5 Stages of Stuttering by Cassie Holguin-Pettinato. If you haven't read it, we hope we inspire you to pick up a copy. Join us on our next episode and follow us on Instagram at literallyliterary.ep.